What's up, Wisecrack? Jared here. Through researching these deeper dumb videos, we've managed to find complexity in the corners of pop culture where you'd least expect it. In the work of Nicolas Cage, for instance, or in films like Shrek, which seems shallow at first glance, but turns out to be surprisingly deep.
Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
We like to think we've gotten reasonably good at extracting meaning from silly cultural artifacts. Still, when intrepid Wisecrack writer Myles approached us wanting to cover Smashmouth, my eyes rolled so thoroughly I think I lost them in the back of my head. Who in the world would consider Smashmouth's oeuvre to be even remotely deep, much less secretly super brilliant? If I were to suggest such a thing, you would eat me alive in the comments, and well, you'd be right to do so. If you've heard even a handful of their songs, you likely think that Smashmouth's music is pretty superficial. But Myles, pictured here after immersing himself in their entire discography for 3 straight weeks, thinks he's discovered something more in Smashmouth's work than frat rockers whining about ex-girlfriends and swooning over current ones. Now, we had our doubts, but when Myles locked the doors to the Wisecrack offices from the outside and refused to let us leave without hearing his pitch, we literally could not say no. Here's Myles' angle. Against all odds, the band best known for providing the background music to Shrek's morning shower and shave, the 3 S's, has also created songs that engage with ideas from Wisecrack fan favorite philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. Don't believe him? Well, I don't blame you, but we're gonna dive in anyway, and maybe I'll prove to you that this isn't just a case of my brain getting smart while my head gets dumb. So welcome to this Wisecrack edition on Smashmouth. Deep or dumb. Allow me to take you back to the year 1997. It was a different time, a simpler time. Titanic sparked a nationwide interest in larger door frames, George Clooney answered questions about bat nipples we didn't even know we had, and the recently released Star Wars special editions gave us a sneak peek at what it would feel like to have our childhoods ruined. There was a Steve Jobs in every apple, a Tamagotchi on every belt, and Americans knew exactly what it was that the Spice Girls really wanted. Enter Smashmouth. Not quite young and blonde enough to be in sync, and not quite talented enough to be Beck, the band occupied a murky place in pop culture. They wrote catchy pop songs that gave you earworms for days, and that's about it. But according to Myles, from the band's early days through the departure of the main songwriter and guitarist Greg Camp in 2008, Smashmouth repeatedly explored some of the key themes of existentialism in its lyrics. But what is existentialism? Existentialism can sometimes be tricky to define with a diverse set of thinkers taking up the label, but we'll say, broadly, it's a philosophy concerned with the basic questions of human existence. There are 2 questions that perpetually rise up for many existentialists that are relevant to our discussion here: authenticity and the search for meaning. Unlike philosophers from centuries past, thinkers like Sartre couldn't just turn to God for answers to these questions, because to him, God doesn't exist, and so we're on our own to find the answers. An existentialist like Camus sees the universe as essentially indifferent to humanity. It has no inherent meaning, and is mostly the place where we just hang out while we're waiting to die. But for someone like Sartre, this quandary offers the opportunity to make our own meaning. Here's where Smashmouth comes in. Our world, according to their vast catalog of mediocrity, is a wacky, out-of-control place with little regard for the people in it. This is most apparent in what is probably the band's most famous song, All Star. If I may read a passage. The ice we skate is getting pretty thin. The water's getting warm, so you might as well swim. My world's on fire, how about yours? That's the way I like it, and I never get bored. We're not the first to suggest that these lyrics seem to be talking about climate change, a fact actually confirmed by the songwriter. So sure, the song evokes global warming, but this is also the first piece of evidence in Myles' claim. On the surface, it's simply, if life gives you global climate change, make unseasonably warm pool parties. But this will be our first hint that Smashmouth is speaking more broadly to the human condition. And here we should look to existentialist Albert Camus, who proposed the philosophy of Absurdism, or the idea that the universe is a cruel joke that is indifferent to our existence. We are conscious beings in an unconscious universe out of our control, and our job involves skating on thin ice in a world that is, sometimes literally, on fire. So far, this comparison seems like a stretch, but when considered with the band's other lyrics, the message starts to come into focus, allegedly. Take the song Hang On, which compares the human condition to that of being constantly at the mercy of a wild, rampaging animal. Let's look to the text. You'll never make everybody's day, but while you're around, you might as well catch the tiger by its tail and hang on, hang on, hang on. Compare that to this monologue from another famous existentialist, Rick Sanchez.
When you know nothing matters, the universe is yours, and I've never met a universe that was into it. The universe is basically an animal. It grazes on the ordinary, creates infinite idiots just to eat them. Not unlike your friend Timmy.
Tommy.
Yeah, hardly matters now, sweetie. You know, smart people get a chance to climb on top, take reality for a ride, but it'll never stop trying to throw you, and eventually it will. There's no other way off.
Now, I'm not going to say that Greg Camp and Steve Harwell are our very own universe's Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith, but I'm not going to say that. Importantly though, absurdism is not the same as hedonism, and there's ample evidence to suggest that this song is more hedonistic than absurdist. A hedonist posits immediate pleasure, as in sex, chocolate, and puppies, but not all at once, as the ultimate purpose of life. And we can say that the lyrics essentially amount to, things will never be great, so might as well get wild. Itself a form of meaning Camus would likely reject. Alternative reading. To exist in our universe is akin to being eternally stuck in 2003's live Cat in a Hat remake, for which this song was a tie-in.
I'll get you, and I'll look like a bloody accident.
Incidentally, ask Myles to explain the weird connections between Smash Mouth, Mike Myers, and the children's film industry in the early 2000s. Anyway, back to Camus. A little bit confusingly, Camus' rejection of meaning did not translate to saying "f*** it" and becoming a couch potato. The dude later wrote a book called The Rebel that encouraged others to rise up and revolt in the name of something larger than themselves. We're not even gonna try to suggest that Smash Mouth invokes Camus' work in The Rebel, but from their masterpiece So Insane, have you checked out the temperature lately? There's a fever that's about to break. We got the hands to turn this around, we got the plan to make it go down. We got the voice fill in this room, we got the minds that go boom. Get up, get out, get on that train. It's becoming so insane, this tiny blue marble is rolling away. Not convinced, let's try again. In the context of this wild universe, Smash Mouth perhaps also plays with the existentialist idea of bad faith as outlined by Jean-Paul Sartre. Rather than lolling at the universe's indifference like Camus, Sartre claims that the good existentialist life is one lived authentically, according to principles we choose out of a pure act of free will, rather than what is convenient or fashionable at any given time. The opposite of this is living in bad faith, or consciously mitigating your responsibility to choose. In the song Shoes and Hats, Smash Mouth offers a critique of bad faith that it gives Sartre the warm and fuzzies. In my old chapeau, well, it's full of holes, but it's got more soul than them. They, who are they anyway? They're just beating each other at being each other with nothing to say. Our narrator, who defies convention by wearing shabby clothes, has more soul than people who spend lots of time and effort beating each other at being each other, rather than being unique, authentic individuals with particular likes and wants. The aforementioned hang on also upholds individual authenticity as more important than conformity or people-pleasing. Since you'll never make everybody's day, it doesn't make sense from an existentialist standpoint to try. And of course, we can never forget who it is that breaks the mold. This one seems like a stretch. As tempting as it is to say that Smash Mouth is condemning people who don't embrace their freedom by trying to be like others, it's likely just a generic call for authenticity that exists as much with goths who complain about posers as it does with French philosophers who chain smoked all day. Okay, now before we get too deep into the song that probably brought like 75% of you here, let's get back to Camus. You might have heard of a guy named Sisyphus, a king condemned to spend eternity rolling a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll down again. He's a central figure for Camus, who argues in the myth of Sisyphus that we find ourselves in a situation very much like that faced by this mythological character. If existentialists like Sartre wanted to assert some higher calling in the world like authenticity, Camus wanted to point out the utter pointlessness of that effort, and suggest what he thought was a better way of dealing with our lot, namely facing up to it directly and learning to appreciate it in spite of the suckiness. According to Camus, one of the defining features of human existence is the conflict between our need for meaning and the universe's indifference to our goals and suffering. Like Sisyphus, we put enormous amounts of effort into achieving particular goals, and like him, we inevitably end up back where we started without a sense of permanent accomplishment. This is the essence of Camus' absurd. He argues that the best possible response is to do what Sisyphus does, embrace the absurdity of our existence and be happy. Smashmouth allegedly encourages listeners to approach the absurdity of existence in the same manner. While So Insane asks us to fix the world, All-Star asks us to learn to love our crumbling hellscape. To quote their magnum opus, "Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Fed to the rules and I hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb. So much to do, so much to see, so what's wrong with taking the back streets?" Now, this might be simply hedonism. Given that the years don't stop coming, making life a headlong dive toward the grave, it literally makes no sense to do anything other than live for fun. That is, to spend one's life finding and pursuing the things that bring the greatest amount of subjective fulfillment. But maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder that death will come for us all. And that, like Sisyphus, we should find happiness in the absurdity of our world. In a sorta similar way, Holiday in My Head conveys the idea that meaning is arbitrary rather than objective, and that this is a cause for celebration. Without externally imposed meanings to trap us in particular ways of being, we are free to run our lives as we wish. Ahem. You look around at your sleepy little town and think that this is as good as it gets. Well, what you're looking at is heaven sent. I got a holiday in my head, I'm just looking for paradise in my living room. According to Myles' existentialist reading, Smashmouth argues that it doesn't matter what sleepy little town you find yourself stuck in, whether that be a dead-end job, or your own barricaded office space, or any other situation that at first glance appears boring and meaningless. We may create a holiday in our head at any time we choose, regardless of our external conditions. It's a cheerier version of Camus' protagonist Meursault in The Stranger. After being sent to prison and sentenced to death for murder, he creates his own holiday in his head as he opens his heart to the indifference of the universe and cheerily imagines the spectators furiously denouncing him at his own execution. Or, less bleakly, if Sisyphus can find enjoyment in pushing a rock up a hill forever, we can certainly look around for the paradise in our living room, no matter how shitty your futon is. But if you're looking to find absurdism distilled in song form, it'd be hard to beat Story of My Life, in which the narrator describes his endless run of bad luck and his affirmative response to it. It doesn't matter what I do, I just can't seem to win, but here I go again. Now, if this is just some self-help-esque when you get knocked down, get up again mumbo-jumbo, it's not Camus. But if this is some acceptance of the incessant, often pointless effort of life, then it's pretty absurdist. Like Sisyphus rolling that boulder uphill, watching it roll down, and rolling it back up again, the narrator keeps engaging with life, no matter how many times it kicks him in the balls. Even when his attempts to socialize and find love are thwarted by his own rotten luck and ineptitude, he decides he'll go again. To quote Camus, the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Steve Harwell happy. Now, did the members of Smashmouth read a truckload of Sartre and Camus back in the early 90s and decide to create a band dedicated to spreading existentialist ideas? Probably not. But the band's emphasis on authenticity, positivity, and chin-strap beards in the face of bad or indifferent circumstances definitely strikes a chord with those of us who have a soft spot for a certain brand of depressing European philosophy. Nevertheless, it's really hard to say any of this is deep with a straight face, so sorry Myles, we're gonna have to say dumb. Please let us out of the office. But what do you think, Wisecrack? Was this hostage situation all for naught? Is Myles reading meaning into these songs that isn't quite there? Or have we barely begun to scratch the surface of what Smashmouth can tell us about this crazy adventure called life? Let us know in the comments, God help us, and as always, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.